Hello and welcome to episode of the Bubbs on Sports podcast. Today is Monday, February 20th. Hope everybody's having a good day so far. Hope everybody enjoyed their weekend. It was the first weekend without football in a very long time. I know you obviously got the gap between the Super Bowl and then the AFC and NFC Championship game, then the Super Bowl, but even that week you still had the Pro Bowl on, and you still had the anticipation to the Super Bowl. This week was the first weekend without football in a while. I know you also had the XFL, but that's not the same. Let's just be honest. I mean, I know it's a lot of people watching on the first weekend, but it does not even compare to the NFL. So it was definitely different without the NFL on this weekend. First time in a very long time, and first time in many, it's going to be the first time really, and we're not going to see football until September. So it's going to be a while. Got to get used to it. You did have all the All-Star festivities over the weekend in the NBA. I thought they were interesting. I thought Saturday night the skills competition was terrible. I thought the three-point contest was all right. Halliburton and Damian Lillard put on a nice little show, but the dunk contest, Mac McClung, what a night for him. I mean, he kind of revived the dunk contest. I will say that was pretty cool to watch. The skills competition was terrible, though. I mean, the three teams, the Giannis team, the Jazz team with Sexton, the other guy, and then Clarkson, and then the young team with, I believe it was Jabari Smith, I think Jaden Ivey, and then one other guy, and he's just blanking from my head right now. That was not good. They couldn't hit any threes. They were missing shots. It wasn't good. But I thought the game last night was solid. I mean, Jason Tatum went off 55 points. Team Giannis got the win. I thought I actually thought the drafting before the game was pretty cool. I didn't mind it. I know the whole reserves before the starters didn't really make much sense to say that you didn't want the players to feel bad for getting picked last. Look, you're an all-star. The fact that you're an all-star is good enough. You know, you're an all-star. I'd rather be an all-star getting picked last than not being an all-star. So I didn't really get that point, but all in all, I thought NBA All-Star Weekend was okay. The skills competition was really disappointing, and it kind of was like that was starting off Saturday night. That was kind of starting off the big Saturday night into Sunday, and it just wasn't good. Three-point contest was all right. I've seen better. Dunk contest was pretty solid. And the game itself, is usually Saturday night's the big night, and that's what was disappointing. But all in all, I didn't think it was terrible over the weekend. So you had that. But we got a lot to get into today, a lot to get into here on a Monday program. We're going to start off with the Rangers making another trade. Chris Drury strikes again as he go out and trade for Tyler Motte, brings him back in, traded for him last year at the deadline except from Vancouver. This time he trades for him from Ottawa, and he is back with the New York Rangers, back for another playoff run. I'm excited about this move. It was a much-needed move for the New York Rangers, much-needed addition to the fourth line. We'll get into it. We'll talk about what the Rangers gave up, what this means for the Rangers, and why the Rangers still probably have one more move coming up here before the trade deadline. So we'll get into that. I also want to get into the Giants bringing back Isaiah Hodgins on a league minimum contract. I believe it's a 1 year, $825,000. It's the league minimum. They're bringing him back. Why I agree with this move, why this was, as the New York Post article put it that I read the other day, it is the easiest decision the Giants will make this offseason, bringing him back. Had a phenomenal year last year in 8 games with the Giants. You can only imagine what he could have done in a full season with the Giants. Had an excellent season. Him and Daniel Jones had a connection going. Why that is a very important signing, and why the Giants, although this is a nice signing, and although they look like they've got the pieces in place, they have a lot of work to do this offseason. A lot of free agents to key positions, and the Giants also not only need to bring those free agents back, but also got to acquire other pieces to build around, most likely Daniel Jones being the future guy. So we'll get into that as well, and we'll obviously finish things off with getting you ready for tonight. NBA, obviously off. Games begin again till Thursday, so the All-Star break today through Thursday. But you got hockey games on tonight. Rangers will be back home, back on normal time after heading up to Canada for a couple games. They'll be back home to face Winnipeg tonight, and the Isles will be on the road in Pittsburgh against the Penguins. The Jets coming off a tough loss last night against the Devils, so they'll be in action tonight, second half of the back-to-back. There's potential Tyler Motte could be in the lineup for the Rangers, so that will be exciting. So expect a Jets team coming off a 4-2 loss last night, second half of back-to-back. Rangers coming off of a tough shootout loss. They're hot right now, though. Their 7-game win streak got snapped, but all good things must come to an end. Expect a good win tonight from the Rangers, I would assume, personally. especially with the Jets coming on a second half of the back-to-back. So, with all that being said, we got a lot to get into on this Monday. This is the Bubbs on Sports podcast, and let's get right into it. So, Chris Drury strikes again. The trade deadline for the NHL isn't even here yet, but Chris Drury is making moves as if today is the day. You've got to get moves done. He is making moves. He is getting the job done. As the Rangers strike another trade yesterday. They got Vladimir Tarasenko about a week ago. On the same day Kevin Durant actually got traded to the Phoenix Suns. So yeah, about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago now. And now he is traded yesterday, he traded for Tyler Motte. So the Rangers are getting, trading Julien Gauthier and a conditional 7th rounder. And that draft pick that the Rangers are giving could become a 6th round pick if the New York Rangers, if the Rangers win one round in the playoffs. So most likely, and I think we all hope as Rangers fans, most likely the Rangers are probably going to win a playoff round, depending on who they get the first round. They're building this roster up as if they're going all in for a Stanley Cup, and I definitely agree with that. With the way that the cap situation is next offseason, the Rangers are going to have a couple tough decisions to make. Not saying that this is their only year to win. They're going to be in contention for a next couple of seasons. They've got a lot of good talent that's locked up. They got a lot of young talent as well. I'm not saying that this is their only year, but next season the salary cap gets interesting. They might have to let pieces go. Acquiring guys is going to be tough. It gets interesting with where the Rangers are next year in the salary cap. So Chris Drury is taking this season. Last year was kind of we're gonna get to the playoffs, get these guys experience. I think they went further than a lot of people expected. They were 2 wins away from the Stanley Cup. I mean, as I always mention, if they don't blow that game 3, they were up 2-0 in game 3 against Tampa. They don't blow that, they win that series, because then they're up 3-0 and they're going to win that series. They end up losing that game, lose the next 3, and obviously lose in 6 games. But that's besides the point. Last year was kind of a year for the Rangers to kind of test what the team's all about, see what pieces they got, see what pieces are going to stick around and all that stuff. And last year was a year where the Rangers, we knew they were going to make the playoffs, but I don't know if the expectation was for them to get all the way to the Eastern Conference Finals. This year, Chris Drury realizes, look, the salary cap situation is going to be a little iffy next offseason. We got to go all in. This is our big opportunity to go all in. And again, this isn't saying this is a Stanley Cup or the Rangers are done. Like, this isn't like this is their only year and the next year they're going to enter a rebuild. They're going to be good for a very long time, but they have a golden opportunity this season with the way the salary cap situation is right now to acquire talent, to bring in pieces, and put this team as close as possible to a Stanley Cup. Put this team with the most talent as possible to take down teams like the Devils, to take down teams like the Lightning, to take down teams like Carolina, the Devils, whoever you may match up against in the postseason, because there is a lot of really good teams, especially in the conference, obviously the Metropolitan, really good teams, and teams at the Rangers last year. Again, that series against the Carolina took them to 7 games. You expect them to be able to beat them now. Boston's obviously still a tough matchup. They've had a great season. Tampa, they lost to last year. It's all about trying to get better so you can take them down. Devils are a good young team that potentially the Rangers could face in the first round. That would be a fun first-round matchup. So Chris Drury continues to make moves, and he's realizing this is a golden opportunity this season. So again, that 6th-round pick could elevate to, or a 7th-round pick could get into a 6th-rounder if the Rangers move to the 2nd round. I don't think many of us will care. If the Rangers win round 1 and move to the 2nd round, I don't think many people are going to care about that draft pick. And Julien Gauthier also gets sent over to Ottawa. Gauthier was just a solid, skated all around. I mean, just a fast guy that just shot the puck and always skated with one. He was kind of just a guy that, skated around with his hair on fire. He was a solid fourth line for us. It wasn't anything too special. A guy that had a ton of breakaways and missed a lot of breakaways. He did make the one against the Dallas Stars. I believe it was, earlier this season, I think it was. Or it was either this year. I think it was this year. So he's, or either this year or last year. I forget. It was one of these seasons. But Gauthier, look, I mean, you're going to send him over. It's the right move. You get a draft pick. You send over a draft pick as well. I like this move for the Rangers. Also, some other news here on this move, and then we'll get into some more stuff about Tyler Motte and what he brings to the table on the fourth line. And I think we can all kind of agree. Well, the news came out during the game against the Flames. They came out that that Tyler Motte was Tyler Motte was going to be held out of the game for Ottawa because they were searching for trade options. And the Rangers in that game against the Flames, basically they eliminated their fourth line in the third period. They didn't play Gauthier or at all in the final shift in the 20 minutes. And then you heard that they're in the market for a fourth liner. They're in the market for a guy like Tyler Motte, a guy who was on the team last year. So you kind of got the hint that this move or some type of move like this was going to go down because Julien Gauthier didn't even play the other night in the third period on the fourth line. They barely even played him. He didn't even really show up at all in the third period, which obviously trade talks going on, not sending a guy out there, holding him out, don't want him to get hurt. All that stuff plays into it. So you kind of felt this move was coming for a little while. But just to add on here to trading Tyler Motte, so he has a $1.35 million cap hit for Gauthier. He leaves $800K, leaves the New York Rangers on pace for to around $900K in total space by March 3rd. So moving Kravtsov could push that available space to around $1.75 million. This is via Vince Mercogliano, who covers the Rangers. So basically what this is saying is, and this is something that Drury has done a very good job of, he's made 2 trades already, and neither of them has involved Vitaly Kravtsov, which is really, really pretty solid considering he's a guy that I think there is probably interest in a guy that definitely you can create some cap space with. So you still have him in your back pocket to possibly move. And I would assume by the end of all this, the Rangers make one more move. If they move Kravtsov, they could have $1.75 million in that trade, and then you exchange him for another guy, put some picks in the move as well, bring another piece. So 2 trades so far. I would assume the Rangers to make one more trade. It would only make sense. Completely max out, completely give up your assets, bring in the most talent possible, bring in what this team needs, and go for it all. So I don't know when the move will go down, but I think we can all agree there's probably at least the way Drury has kind of structured his move so far, leaving about $1 million left in cap space for about one more move. You would assume the Rangers are not done. What is that move? Is it Kane? Is it somebody else? That is still, to be seen. But I think we can all agree with the way the salary cap is right now, the Rangers are still in a position to bring in more talent over the next couple days, over the next, until the trade deadline comes up. But now more on to Tyler Motte. So obviously he came over last season in the trade with Vancouver, had some injuries, so he only played 9 games for the Rangers the rest of the regular season, played 49 with the Canucks. He did play the postseason for the Rangers. I always flash back to that one goal he had in Game 6 against Carolina to get the scoring started. Carolina early in that game was putting a lot of pressure on it. I think the shots were like 8-2 if I remember correctly. He went down, scored. MSG was going electric. Rangers win that game, force a Game 7, obviously go on the road and blow out Carolina on the road, getting them to the Eastern Conference Finals. So that was probably his highlight as a Ranger. But again, a guy that's familiar with the team. This season's got 3 goals, 6 assists, 9 points, got a +1, plus minus of +1. He's not, he's a fourth line player. He's not a game changer. He's not a guy that's going to come in and be make or break whether or not this team is going to win a Stanley Cup. But we needed a depth piece. We needed a guy that's going to be on this fourth line. We needed a guy that's, could provide more stability, more consistency. He gives you that. He's 27. He's been in the league for a little bit. He's been around. And something that I really like about this move is he played with the Rangers last year. He has playoff experience. He was with the team last season. He knows, the environment. He knows what it's like to play in the city, what the team needs. He knows, the way Gerard Gallant coaches, the plays he runs. It's not like you're inserting somebody brand new. He's a guy that already has a ton, he played last year for us. He already has experience. He literally played last season, 9 games, did get hurt, but came back for the postseason, and then played 38 games this season with the Senators. Now he's back. So it's basically, he didn't miss much. 38 games away, Now he's back for the remaining 20-plus games that the New York Rangers got this season. So, again, solid acquisition, needed a boost to the fourth line. He's definitely an upgrade over Gauthier. He's an upgrade over our fourth line right now. And something that you need is the Rangers need a deep team in the postseason because there's a lot of deep teams. A lot of teams are deep. And how you win games, how you win in the playoffs, in the Stanley Cup, and in the NHL playoffs, and getting ultimately to the Stanley Cup, you need teams that are deep. Not only first, second, third, but you also need a fourth line to be physical. You need to be deep. You need to be aggressive. You need forechecking, all that type of stuff. You need your fourth line to have. Sometimes teams, look at your top two lines and it's like, oh my God, this is insane. But when they're off the ice, things change. The Rangers need that fourth line boost. They get that here. Just want to give you some numbers on Tyler Motte last season in the playoffs. He had 2 goals, 43 hits, 12 blocks, and 12 takeaways. This is a guy that's aggressive. He's physical. He plays with a lot of energy. When you look at the numbers, he's not a guy like Vladimir Tarasenko. When you look at the numbers, 30-plus goal scorer season. Like, when you look at the numbers, he blows you away, right? Tyler Motte's not that type of guy. Now, they're 2 different players. First of all, one's a winger, one's a center. They're 2 different players, but they're also, one's a goal scorer. The other guy gives you fourth line, gives you leadership, gives you a guy that's already played on the team before, knows, the team, knows the city, knows the guys. He was in this locker room last season, right? So it's a easy transition for him. He knows what it takes. He knows what this team needs. He knows what they're asking for of him. But when you look at the numbers, you say, he's all right. But when you look at what he did last year in the playoffs, he really showed up in the postseason. He really did. And again, physicality, something where he had 43 hits in the postseason last season, 12 blocks and 12 takeaways. He's aggressive. He's physical. I don't think his physicality gets talked about much. He is pretty physical. I think that's an underrated part of his game. And it's almost like when the bright lights shine last year. Again, that goal in Game 6, I'm not saying that was the reason why we won the series because we dominated in Game 7, but that goal really shifted the momentum. Early in that game, Carolina was dominant. They were just forechecking, getting shots on Igor. Him scoring that goal, we were getting outshot early in the game like 8-2. Him scoring that goal, as I mentioned, was huge. Gave us momentum, gave us energy. Go on to win that game, go on to win Game 7. In the postseason, he was way better than what he was in the regular season. Bright light shine, Tyler Motte showed up last season. Expect the same this year. Much, much needed acquisition for the Rangers, and Chris Drury strikes again. And I mean, you look at this roster, Panarin, Mika, Fox, Kreider, Tarasenko. You got your goal scorers, depth pieces as well. This team is legit. They're ready to go. And as I mentioned, expect one more move from the New York Rangers over the course of leading up to the trade deadline here. So Rangers have the Jets tonight, then Red Wings, Capitals, Kings. They will close out February. And in 16 games in March, 6 games in April. So about 26 games left for the New York Rangers. They currently stand third in the Metropolitan at 33-14-9, 75 points. They're 4 points behind the Devils and 7 points behind Carolina. They are 8-0-2 in their last 10, and that point up in Calgary was still huge. But I mean, man, you look at the Metropolitan Division. I mean, they are third there, so they're going to be third or second most likely in the Metro because you got Pittsburgh who's got 63 points. They're 12 points behind the Rangers, so the Rangers have space here, and I also like that too about Drury. Now's the time, make trades, get these guys adjusted into the team, and make your push. They've got space. Like, they've got breathing room. They're going to be third or better in the Metropolitan. I'll tell you what, though. A first-round matchup of the Rangers-Devils would be really exciting for the area, too. Rangers-Islanders would be great, obviously, but the Islanders are, they're right on the outside looking in of a playoff spot. They're currently right now at 63 points, so the Penguins. It's a 3-team race. It's between the Islanders, Capitals, and Penguins for that final spot in the Metropolitan, for that 4th spot. It's a 3-team race because the Flyers have no chance, and the Blue Jackets are one of the worst teams in hockey. They have 41 points. I think that's like the 3rd or 4th lowest in the league right now. They're terrible. Blackhawks are bad too. There's a couple really bad teams. Blue Jackets are in that category. But a first-round matchup of Devils-Rangers would be great for the area. I mean, that would be phenomenal. First-round matchup would be great. And it's lining up that could potentially happen. Of Devils-Rangers. Could potentially happen. So, you beat the Devils, you're in a good spot. Beating the Devils would be great. Beating the Devils, beating the Islanders. I don't like the Bruins. I grown to not like the Carolina last year during that series. Beating any of these teams. I mean, any team in the Eastern Conference really makes you feel good. Let's just be honest here. So, it'll be interesting, but the Rangers are stacking up this team and getting loaded, ready to go for what we expect a deep playoff push this season. And hopefully by the end of this, Rangers will be hoisting up the Stanley Cup trophy. And that's obviously the ultimate goal. So now we move on here to a Giants team who I did a couple days ago. I said the Rangers are the closest to a championship in New York. Giants are, I believe I had them at 4th because I had the Rangers, Mets, Yankees, Giants. So I had Giants 4. And they got a big offseason ahead. If they want to turn into another playoff team again, they got a big offseason ahead. But the other day, they made a really nice acquisition or a really nice re-signing as they re-signed Isaiah Hodgins to a 1-year deal after a breakout season. And look, this is a very solid move for the Giants. And just to give you some numbers here, so he's coming back on a 1-year minimum. He's an exclusive rights free agent, which means any player with fewer than 3 seasons and an expired contract. So he falls under that category. So he can't negotiate with other teams. So the Giants really had all the power here. It was the easiest decision of their life. It was the easiest decision they'll make in the offseason. His performance last year gave him zero question on whether or not to bring him back. It is a 1-year deal and a league minimum, which for him is $825,000. So you're getting a guy back on a league minimum that could potentially play a big role next year for the New York Giants. And look, this was much needed. Last season, Isaiah Hodgins played 8 games, had 33 catches, 42 targets, 351 yards. 10.6 was his average per catch. I go back to the game against the Vikings, the wild card round, which the big reason why the Giants came out and won that game and got to the divisional round was because of Isaiah Hodgins. He had 8 catches, 9 targets, 105 yards, 13.1 was his average and 1 touchdown. So this is a very much-needed, solid move. And you really wonder, what Isaiah Hodgins could have done last year. He played 2 games with Buffalo to start the season, then he played 8 games with the Giants. And he really fit into the Dable system. Dable knew him from Buffalo. Joe Shane knew him from Buffalo. They bring him in, knows the system, got very quick chemistry with Daniel Jones. Him and Daniel Jones got connected very early on. You just look at, some of his, first, especially, just look at some of his first games. I mean, he had, look at the 2 games in a row against Washington and Philly. Both had touchdowns. And he finished last year, with 4 touchdowns. He obviously had a touchdown as well in that Vikings game. But him and Daniel Jones just early on had that connection. And the Giants need to continue to build around their quarterback. Now, whatever happens with Daniel Jones, who knows? Whether he comes back, whether he signs elsewhere, whether, there's a team that comes out and gives him this major $37 to $40 million deal, and the Giants say, no way, we're matching that. Whatever happens, the Giants last season had zero talent in the receiving corps. Isaiah Hodgins was nice, but compared to the other teams, they need so much more talent. Whether that's going out and trading for a or getting a T. Higgins, whether it's going out and making a blockbuster trade for a DeAndre Hopkins, going through the draft. I think the Giants want to take the approach of, again, and I've gotten this feeling a lot from the New York Giants. This front office, Brian Dable, they want to win now. They don't want to have this where they make the playoffs this season and then next year they kind of take a step back, kind of have a youth kind of movement with younger players, and then the year after that then be back into the postseason. I don't get that feeling from this Giants front office. I get the feeling of they bring back Hodgins, which is a smart move, a move where Daniel Jones and him had that good connection. Down the stretch was the Giants' best receiver, and I don't really know if there was much debate. But I get this feeling of they want to bring in a guy like a Higgins. They want to bring in a guy like a DeAndre Hopkins. They want to bring in one of those big-name pieces because they want to win now. And the Giants have the pieces at quarterback and running back potentially to win now. Upgrade the defense a little bit. Upgrade the receiving core. Offensive line, you need another interior offensive lineman, interior defensive lineman, and then you really feel good. They have a lot of work to do, but they got a lot of cap space. They've got 7 draft picks. They've got pieces that they can use to get this roster built up and get to the level of the other teams in their division, which we've talked about a lot this offseason. Getting crushed by Philadelphia was a reminder to the Giants, that's who you got to beat. That's the team that's going to run through. Now, Philly's got some issues as well. They lost both coordinators. They got a ton of free agents. I mean, they've got a ton of key free agents. Kelsey's a free agent. Miles Sanders, I believe, a free agent. Boston Scott's, I think, a free agent. So 2 of their big running backs are free agents. I know, Kenneth Gainwell obviously isn't, but C.J. Gardner-Johnson's a free agent. They've got a ton of free agents. So you could make the argument potentially that the Eagles next season could be in a tough spot because they're also going to have to pay Daniel Jones. So the Eagles could be in a tough spot potentially these next, couple off seasons or, especially this off season in terms of how they want to spend their money. Giants got cap space. They've got money. But they also have a lot of guys that are not coming back. So their free agent wide receivers, Sterling Shepard, Darius Slayton, Richie James. Now, Marcus Johnson is a free agent, but he didn't really play much of a role. So I put an asterisk next to him because they've got 4 of them. He's one of them. Also, Daniel Jones and Saquon Barkley are also free agents. So you bring back Hodgins, but potentially Shepard, Slayton, Richie James are all gone. Now, Shepard injury prone. Richie James, I think, is going to get a solid contract somewhere else. I think I don't know how I want to, again, I think trying to use like a player as an example of a guy who's probably going to go elsewhere and get a nice contract. Similar like a Jameson Tyone. Went to the Cubs. Yankees weren't going to pay him that money. He's going to go to the Cubs, be an innings eater, be a solid starter for them. Richie James, similar situation. Giants aren't going to pay him what he wants to be a slot receiver when there's better options out there and the Giants are okay with moving on from him. He might go to a rebuilding team or a contending team that just needs some depth or a slot receiver, something like that, and go there and make some more money. I think Richie James will probably walk. Shepard's a concerning thing. These are all unrestricted free agents, by the way. But Shepard is concerning because his injuries. Obviously tore his ACL this season. Can he stay healthy? Do you bring him back on a 1-year, 2-year prove-it deal? You also remember, you still have Kenny Galladay's contract. What do you do with him? Do you cut bait with him? How do the Giants approach that? There's a really good chance. As much as we talk about trying to add on to what the Giants already have, there's a good chance all these guys are gone and the Giants are really just left with Isaiah Hodgins, which would then make it where you're going to have to not only build through free agency and trades, but also build through the draft. The Giants' receiving core could look a whole lot different next season. A whole lot different. And I think that's the expectation. But the question is, do they bring back one of those restricted free agents? Shepard, Slayton, Richie James. I don't think Richie James coming back, nor do I think Giants want him to come back. He was too inconsistent, had too many bad drops last season. But, again, you got to build around Daniel Jones. And whether or not Daniel Jones returns as the Giants quarterback, let's say he doesn't, you got to still have talent in place at the receiving position in order for Daniel Jones or in order for another quarterback to want to come here. That's just how it is. So that's how I see it. So, and if Daniel Jones comes back, you also have Saquon Barkley as a free agent on your hand as well. The Giants have a lot of work to do. They do. And I think there's this notion that the Giants are in a great position. They've got coaching. They've got all that. But they've got a lot of work they got to do. They have a lot of work on their hands. A lot of work to do this offseason. Now, they've got the pieces in place in the front office to make these decisions. But you got a quarterback that's a free agent. You have a running back that's a free agent. You need pieces on the defense. This is a crucial offseason for the New York Giants. And how do they approach this receiving core will definitely be interesting, as they have many other free agents too as well to address. But Isaiah Hodgins is a good start. They bring him back, and he is back with the New York Giants. So, look, Daniel Jones was phenomenal last season. I would bring Daniel Jones back. Now, again, on a $30+ million deal, I don't know if I'd go $37 million, $35 maybe. I mean, again, though, if you sign it, that's the issue. These are all these guys are free agents. If somebody comes in with a $40 million deal for Daniel Jones, then you let him walk because you're not going to give him that money. He's just not worth that. He's very good, but he's not elite. He's not going to get elite type money. He shouldn't. Unless if a desperate team, as I mentioned, comes in and gives him a massive contract like that, I don't see where the Giants are going to run into that problem. But we'll see. I think Daniel Jones is back with the Giants. I think the Giants are going to do everything they can to get him back. Saquon, I can't say the same. I think Joe Schoen in his press conference at the end of the season talked a lot about Daniel Jones and kind of said about Saquon, look, he didn't say this, but if you read between the lines, he's got some injury history. He's a running back. How much do you really want to give a guy that possibly in 3 years could be struggling to stay healthy and not the same player? How much do you want to give that guy, right? That's an issue. If you give him a 4-year deal and 3 to 4 years he's only playing 12 games a season, that's a problem. And maybe if he's missing playoff games, he's missing crucial games, that's an issue. Now, he was healthy this season. He had a very good season, but can you trust him to do the same for the next 4 or 5 seasons if you give him that big deal? And he doesn't want to reset the market. He wants to get Christian McCaffrey money, which I believe is, about like $16 million a year? You're going to give Saquon Barkley $16 million a year? It's interesting. It really is. A lot of interesting offseason topics for this Giants team as they get ready to enter into a big offseason with a lot of things on their plate, but you trust and they have the pieces. Again, this is what's good about this Giants team. They've got a lot of free agents. They've got a lot of pieces that they need to fix. They need to fix linebackers, a couple guys in the secondary, defensive line a little bit. They need to fix things, right? But they got a lot of cap space and they got draft picks. So they got multiple avenues. And this team has shown, and the rumors say, they're not afraid to go out and strike a big-time deal for maybe a T. Higgins or a DeAndre Hopkins or somebody like that. Check the trade market, right? So it'll be interesting to see how the Giants approach this. But first, off-season thing is checked off, I should say, as Isaiah Hodgins back with the Giants. And really was just a feel-good story. A guy that just came out of the middle of nowhere and they found a diamond in the rough. And I said it, this is a guy that potentially, maybe you found a diamond in the rough. Maybe this can be a 850, 900 receiving guy next season that can be a real big piece of your team no matter who else you bring in. That's potentially could be the case here. I mean, he had 351 yards in 8 games. I'm not going to do the calculations in my head, but let's say he played every game for the Giants last season. And I know, let's say he played every single game for the Giants. He had 8 games played with the Giants, 2 with the Bills, so technically 10. Let's say he played 17 games. You say 600, 700 yards maybe? Is it crazy to say that he can eclipse 800 next season? I don't think so. So that's really that's Giants they got some serious potential here in Isaiah Hodgins, especially the way he showed out in the postseason. That tells you a lot about a player. All right, so now we move on here to the New York Sports Update to close out things here on Monday program. Today you got the Ducks, Panthers, Bruins, Senators, Flames, Flyers, Sharks, Kraken, and the Islanders, Penguins. You also got the Rangers, Jets tonight, 7 Eastern back at the Garden. And you got one big college basketball game tonight, TCU, Kansas, 9 Eastern on ESPN, one top 25 game. Kentucky also got the win over the weekend. That was a big win for them over Tennessee, 66-54. 4 games left before tournament play. Big 4 games coming up. Florida, Auburn, then I believe it's Vanderbilt, and then Arkansas to close out the season. So big couple games coming up for Kentucky, but they sweep Tennessee, and they really kind of put themselves back on the map as Joe Lunardi's projected bracketology, I think, had Kentucky as he didn't have them anywhere near the bubble or first team out or last 4 in. So that shows that Kentucky's probably around a 5 through 12 seed right now, which is solid, which is good. Assuming maybe a 9 or 10 seed probably. I think the projection was a 10 seed, New York or the Eastern whatever section or whatever, and they played Providence first round. That was like a projection. Again, a lot can happen, but we'll see. Kentucky, big win. Got a lot more work to do, obviously, before tournament play and all that begins, but obviously sweep Tennessee, that's big on your resume. Big. I mean, sweeping Tennessee twice, top 10 team in the nation, that's big. So that will do it for the podcast here today. Another good podcast in the books. And, as the offseason rolls on here for the NFL, got a lot more topics to talk about. I'm going to have a video up later today, I believe, on In the Trench with Gang Green, my Jets podcast. I'm going to have talking about Derek Carr, and I want to talk a little bit more about kind of comparing him to Matthew Stafford and doing a video where a lot of people are making the comparison of him to Stafford, and I want to make that comparison, and the numbers are so similar. Everyone talks about Derek Carr, his career record, his playoff record, and then if the Jets get him, that's going to be a problem. Stafford, same situation. He didn't have a good career record with the Lions. He didn't have a good playoff record with the Lions. You want to know why? Because they gave him no piece around him. It was a dysfunctional franchise. Same thing with Derek Carr at the Raiders. What happened when you put Stafford in L.A. with talent around him? He won a Super Bowl. With an elite defense and Cooper Kupp, he won a Super Bowl. Similar situation here with Derek Carr. He would be leaving a organization that has given him nothing in the Raiders, going to the Jets, who have an elite defense, or a very good defense, maybe not elite, but very good, and got pieces around him like Garrett Wilson, Elijah Moore, Breece Hall, and all that. Give him that. Not saying that he's going to win a Super Bowl year one, but the success, the blueprint's there. And we've seen this similar situation before. So I wanted to talk about that and get into it and talk a little bit why I was all Rodgers at first. I was. And I'm kind of now moving more towards, I'd probably say I want Carr now more than I want Rodgers, personally. I think there's a lot of things that Rodgers just gives you questions. And you could always fall back on, he's won a Super Bowl and all these things. That's great. He won one in 2011. He hasn't been there back since. And he's got a very bad playoff record. And to say that he never had peace around, he had Devontae Adams, one of the best receivers in football. So don't sit here and say that he had no peace around him when he had Devontae Adams for all those years. He lost 3 games in his building the last 3 years that have been really bad. He lost the NFC Championship game to the Bucks. He lost the divisional round to the Niners. And a winning scenario this past season, Week 18, he lost to the Lions. In his home building, all 3 of those games. That's a bad look. He also got swept by the Lions this year. That's not good. And can you trust Rodgers to put in the work on the outside? Can you? That's a problem. So I'm kind of all aboard the Carr train now. He's a safer option. He's a more reliable option. He's going to be here for 4 or 5 years. Rodgers might be a one and done, and then you're entering. I mean, if Rodgers comes here, you give up picks, and then you're messed up for the future, and he gets you to the wild card game in year one, then retires. Is that really good? And what if Derek Carr goes to another team and gives them 5 years of maybe a Super Bowl and playoffs? What would you rather? I'd take Carr. So that's how I see it. So I'll get into that later on. So stay tuned. A lot more content coming, as always. Hope you enjoyed it, and thanks for listening. Or thanks for watching.